Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Let's start with the schedule, though. Anything jump at you? Anything pop at you as a hot part of the season or something to be concerned about now that we have the order?
Most of the more fascinating stories are maybe reserved for other teams. I think the Chiefs are, kind of it's a good schedule. It's an interesting schedule. There's plenty of prime time. But the Patriots got supposedly the toughest schedule. The Ravens have a real tough start. So I think the Chiefs' schedule is just kind of interesting because we want to know, but doesn't look particularly ridiculously daunting right off the top. Doesn't look like there's real bad stretches. I'd say it's a nice fair schedule for the Chiefs. I know that's not a very sexy viewpoint, but
right.
I don't think anything really that big jumps out at me. Maybe the fact that I guess that the Texans-Chiefs is still considered kind of a sexy game. I think there's a little more to some people about that. Like, Chiefs have kind of handled the Texans, and did the unbelievable comeback against them in the playoffs, and most people just forget how the game started. So it's more like, well, they just blew them out after they spotted them a few points. So maybe that's part of it. The thing that I think is intriguing is that the division is the Chiefs have dominated it so strongly in recent year under Andy Reid, period, that there's a little bit of mystery about the other teams. You could make a case that, a couple of these teams might pop up and be better than people think. So I guess there's some intrigue in that. But the Chiefs just seem so poised to go 13-3 or 14-2 that how it lays out and, thinking of anything as particularly difficult almost seems kind of silly because the Chiefs just have a lot of boxes checked right now.
Do you buy complacency as an enemy for the Chiefs? And I bring that up because everybody loves that, okay, everyone's coming back, and you're not able to get out on the field, and we'll see. We'll have this conversation based upon the fact that they're going to play 16 games but not have the OTAs and minicamps. So the fact that everybody's back is being viewed as a positive for the Chiefs, and I get why. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that it is a positive. I'm not saying it's not, but it seems like everything, and you just said it, a good, fair schedule. I agree. And I even think that the schedule maybe even is more than fair to the Chiefs, right? The Patriots, they draw, and there's a scenario that you could paint that Jarrett Stidham sucks, right? And the Patriots are a second or third place team, and yet the Chiefs luck into getting them on the time that Tom Brady steps away. So that game gets easier than maybe it looked there. The division they have owned, that's true as well. All these things seem to point to the Chiefs, like you just said, 13-3, 14-2 seems like such a layup. Does that put complacency in? Does that because there isn't anything to be afraid of, or is what we heard out of the ESPN talking heads that wow, after the Texans at Los Angeles at Baltimore, that's a real bear to have to handle both those road games, or 3 of the first 4 are playoff teams from last year. I mean, is that going to scare them? I do worry a little bit about complacency with this team.
I think the season is really difficult to weigh right now just because of the unbelievable circumstances we have right now. It strikes me that the Chiefs are kind of a rollicking, fun-loving bunch that in some ways you could think might be attuned to complacency, but it just seems like the fun aspect of the way they play, they seem to have a real joy playing football. And so going out there, this is like not nervous time or whatever, and it's fun. And could that lead to complacency? I guess, but it doesn't seem like that to me right now. It seems to me like the Chiefs, just are in a spot where they like to play the game, they like to celebrate it, they like to laugh, they like to have fun, they like to take names and kick ass. So I guess I would lean towards no as far as a letdown is concerned.
Okay. The Texan game, you were touching on them. Bill O'Brien's won the AFC South. Granted, it hasn't been the strongest division since Andrew Luck started getting hurt, but he's won the AFC South 4 of the last 5 years. He's won 2 playoff games. That's not great. 2-4 is not a great playoff record, but it's 100% more than Andy Reid won in his first 5 years as the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Are the Texans just being pushed away as nothingness way too quickly?
I do agree with that. When I was talking about the opener, I was talking about in the perception of the fans, I think, and maybe some observers. I do.
No, I agree. That's what had me thinking about the question. Is that I agree with you. I think everybody looks at the Texans like they're some 5-11 club.
I do, and I think that's ridiculous. They have the quarterback in place. I think Bill O'Brien is a better coach than people give him credit for. Of course, they give him no credit, so that's not exactly. I mean, they give him. He's really sort of viewed as a clown, and I think that's completely unfair. Their defense may be getting a little bit old, but they have a new coordinator that can invigorate some life into it. Yeah, I think the Texans are probably an undervalued team because I think that just the perception of them is that they're okay, but they played in the division where the potentially best team's quarterback got hurt and whatever. But I agree with you. I think they're an undervalued team. They certainly would. They would have the ultimate chip on their shoulder in coming in for the opener. There's no question about that. But do they have the goods to challenge? Do many teams have the goods to challenge the Chiefs? That's the issue. And it would seem to me like if there was to be a little bit of laxness coming into the season for the Chiefs, all it would take is the Texans coming in and kick them in the teeth, or maybe the Ravens beating them by 2 touchdowns in game 3 to maybe refocus that.
If there is a poison pill to this schedule, I think it is that the Texans come in and sting them. I mean, they did have them down 24-0 after one quarter at home. They did beat them. So 5 quarters in, they were winning big, right, into the 8 quarters that they played this past year. So if they would come in and get the win, and we saw Andy Reid get stung by the Titans in his second year as the head coach of the Chiefs, a terrible Titan team that would go on to win nothing, and they beat the Chiefs in that opener. Strange things can happen in openers. And then to have to go on the road in back-to-back games to head out to trudge out to L.A. for the Chargers' debut in their new stadium with an 0-1 record, and then with Baltimore looming on the other side, the look-ahead factor of Baltimore. I guess maybe is that it? That's the scary scenario. You come out of there 1-2 and not 2-1, the way everybody I think on paper has it.
Yeah, I think you would instantly have some alarm bells if they drop the opener. And I don't expect that to happen, but I think that the schedule looks more difficult when you think of the fact that the Texans might win the game. So I think most people do expect the Chiefs to go and beat the Chargers, and I think probably most people expect maybe they are going to lose to the Ravens in the game on the road. So that Texans game does become paramount, and I guess that's a good thing. And maybe that will further, maybe if the Chiefs are thinking that far down the road, I don't think players generally do that type of thing, at least when they're just going to play their opener. I think they're going to come out and flames are going to be shooting in the sky, and they're going to get their championship rings on that day, I assume, or whatever. And it could be a giant buzzkill if they were to lose the game, and that would require a refocusing. And the Chiefs have been pretty good about going out on the road in situations that are difficult and grabbing a win that maybe looked like it wasn't in the cards.
You just said flames are going to be shooting in the sky, or they're going to come out to a stone-cold, silent, empty stadium.
That's a good point. How about me just completely forgetting that, well, the flames might still be shooting in the sky, but nobody might be there. Yeah, so
but I mean, does that, do you? I don't know how you do it, but do you have a thought on whether or not an empty stadium benefits or hurts the Chiefs, or benefits or hurts anybody? Is there a style of play that it gets better?
I think it absolutely hurts the home teams. Now, the NFL has not been any kind of real hellhole for visiting teams in general over the last few years, but still, especially at a time when you really need to I think if the Chiefs had, don't you think that it's really plausible to say if the Chiefs had played in an empty stadium in those games where they fell well behind, that they would have lost? I think that that's a real possibility. I think there was a tremendous boost that came from the crowd. You know, you're down 24-0, and there's nobody in the stand. The thing about that game that I thought was great, a lot of times, because it's the playoffs, the fans are different. And in a regular season game, if the Chiefs were down 24-0, you could have, you know, it would have been crickets out there. But the fans were really engaged. At 24-0, they were still screaming their heads off. And so if there was nobody there and they were down 24-0, I think they might have lost the game, no matter how much they ended up winning by.
My first reaction is that empty stadiums hurt the Chiefs. They seem to be emotionally driven. But then, you know, I'm like, well, is that just because they're good? When you get going good, the crowd gets going, and you when you're winning, you know, you run around all fiery and everything. We know when they're down, Patrick Mahomes is there going, let's do something special. Let's do something, you know, memorable. You know, yeah, he's there trying to fire him up, but that, you know, there isn't the flexing and the head bob and the all that kind of thing. Does this team feed on emotion more than other teams, or is it just they win more so we see more emotion?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. I would tend to lean on the side of the Chiefs in a very good way, or a bunch of show-offs. You know, I mean, and so if you don't have anybody to show off to, then I would think that's going to hurt. Now, they can fire each other up and look into each other's eyes and, you know, high five if they're going to do that, or, you know, chest bump, or who knows what celebrations we're going to see. But I would think that this team is a team that likes to put on a show. And it's a lot easier to put on a show when there's somebody to watch your show. And just thinking, oh, there's millions of people watching on television, I don't know if it's going to be different. It's going to be really different for players. I mean, every single athlete you hear talk about this talks about how they feed off the crowd. Even the most seemingly, you know, in the most mild-mannered of sports, in golf. I mean, for dozens of golfers say, oh, it's going to be weird out there. I feed off the crowd. You know, that's what I come to play for the fans. And that's not even an emotional sport. I mean, football is the most emotional sport. So I would think you know, ratcheting up your own emotion and your own fire is going to be something that different people are going to have to do in different ways. But I can't see that in any way, shape, or form it helps the home team. No way.
No, I agree. And last year the Chiefs were 7-1 on the road and 5-3 at home. And I think that's more, you know, fluke, anomaly, than it is like, oh, well, you're just playing on the Chiefs to suck at home here moving forward. Andy Reid doesn't know how to win an Arrowhead. No, I don't think that's the case. I think just, you know, you know what else they had going on? They had defensive scores, you know, short fields being set up by fumbles, and that's just a quirk in how it works. I do think, Danny, when we get to, you know, the bye week and come out of the bye week on November 22nd, 4 out of 5 on the road late in the year, although to Andy Reid's point, you know, we were starting to get into bad weather, and they're going to go to Vegas, Tampa, Miami, and a dome inside a city on the Gulf, New Orleans. You know, it couldn't get any better for road trips for fans that want to follow the team late in the year, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Chiefs fans could very well face the prospect of maybe not sitting in a cold weather game. There's been quite a bit of that the last couple of years. And they play on December 6th at home, and then they play, you know, 2 days after Christmas. But so in the last, you know, month of the season, as you said, there's one game at home in the likelihood of cold weather. And if you want to get away from it, there's 3 fun spots to go. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. The other thing is that's clear that this talk, now I think there's probably dozens, or at least a dozen, other NFL schedules. Like, everyone's like, well, you got to put the schedule out, so if you got to take this game off or that game off. I don't know that they do. I think the one thing that we can tell that, particularly if first of all, if you're knocking games off, we're definitely not going to have fans, right?
Oh, yeah.
So all you got to do is line up the charters and the television crews and get them to wherever you're going. So I think there's probably backup schedules that are out there that they go, okay, listen, you know, even if they get to where it's like, hey, we're not starting until November, and, you know, whatever happens, and there's a vaccine, and so now it's all clear. Hey, you know, they get started on November 30th. They're going to play the 6 divisional games and then throw a playoffs together. Whatever it is, I think those are out there. I think people spent way too much time trying to figure out a 16, you know, everyone's 16 games, 17-week schedule. and then how they would manipulate it. Like, do you buy that the league was ever considering the interconference games as the first four? Because the conference games, the divisional games are sprinkled all throughout here. That clearly isn't what we got. Maybe it does exist someplace else, but do you think that scenario was actually ever anything beyond just a chit-chat at some point?
I don't know. I've seen a couple of people point out some things that were in the schedule that maybe seem to be pointed toward the loss of games, like all the teams that play each other in the second week. I think this is correct, in some form or fashion, have their byes on the same week to later in the season. I don't know. In certain divisions, I guess it is, but so maybe you could move the games from the second week, scrub those games, and they're played on the bye week. There've been a couple of things like that put in there, but I'm of the feeling, I think I'm leaning more towards you, that they made this schedule. There's contingencies that could be done, but they're not done right now because they don't even know if they have to do them. And their general message is that we're going to play these games. And it would seem likely to me that they can, at the very least, play games without fans. I mean, that's still, even in this uncertain time, the most overused phrase of all time, but in these uncertain times, it seems like it's far enough off that games without fans is possible. Now, we could have a big relapse, and I could sound like an idiot, but at least games without fans seems pretty plausible to me right now.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe it's just me wanting it. So I'm finding the scenario and choosing only to read the information that points me towards that. I'm open to that possibility very much so. I try to be sensible. But I do think that there is a way to play the games. And I think it might require the players, well, let's take a break. I don't want to go down that road because we'll spend 10 more minutes on it. We'll take a break. We'll talk more with Danny Clinkscale. Danny Unleashed. He's brought to you by our friends at Easton Roofing. Find him online at eastonroofing.com. Commercial, yes. Residential, yes. They do both, and they are the best in the business. Call 913-257-5426. Find them online at eastonroofing.com. Easton Roofing, integrity matters.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And, Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
All right, the good sense, end of the hour answer. Not counting the Texans, how many times have the Chiefs opened the regular season against a team they played in the playoffs the previous year?
Well, I'm assuming, my first instinct is it's either really low or really high. Because that's why you went out and asked it. But then I also know that coming up with 15 questions every week, plus questions for Stuff That Chumps, is a tough task. And you may have just been like, well, this is at least topical. And it's going to be some turd mediocre number.
No.
No, it is really high or really low. It is either high or really low.
Zero.
Twice. And the two are quite notable. The last time it happened, Miami in 1972, first game ever in Arrowhead in the regular season, the game after they lost the longest game in history. The first time it happened was their first game as an AFC team, the Minnesota Vikings in 1970, trying to get the Vikings did win at home in that game. Of course, you don't get revenge for a postseason loss in the regular season, but those are the two, Miami in 72, Minnesota in 70. It will happen a third time this year.
Well, interesting stuff. We were playing for Good Sense there. GoodSenseSubs.com. That's where you can go online, put your order in, pick the time, pick it up there curbside. They'll bring it out to you. And do not forget about their Good Sense to Go meals, just $5. These are great ways to stock up on a lot of meals so that you can just pop them in and warm them up. Very efficient and great for taking if you're looking out for someone, either older or compromised immune system, and you're taking care of all their food. This is a great way to have the meal ready to go. Good Sense has it all put together for you. Of course, their signature pastas, yes, they have those, but also grilled Alaskan salmon, classic pot roast, lasagna, naked chicken and veggies, meatloaf. It's all at Good Sense. Go to GoodSenseSubs.com to put your order in today. We're talking to Danny Clinkscale. He's brought to you by our friends at Easton Roofing. Danny, from a standpoint of just to stick with the schedule here real quick, the 4 out of 5 on the road, Vegas, Tampa, then home for Denver, then at Miami, New Orleans. Where do they need to be record-wise going into that portion? Does that portion scare you a little bit, the 4 out of 5 on the road?
I'm going to make Chiefs fans happy here by saying that I don't know that there's much to fear for the Chiefs, to be honest with you. Maybe next year will be that classic, what has it been, 15 years since a team has repeated to win the Super Bowl, something like that. So maybe I'm just, Pollyanna here, but I don't know if, I guess they'd have to have a very good record going into that stretch, but I think they're going to. So, again, not the sexiest of answers, but I can't look at this schedule and try to work up some angst. Maybe other fans can, but I can't. I think the Chiefs are going to be really good, and I'm going to be surprised if they're in any scenario late in the season, heading into any stretch of games where you're like, uh-oh, they're in trouble now, or, they haven't got themselves in very good position here for this tough stretch. I just don't.
Yeah. And that's what takes me back to C point A, complacency. That's
right.
That's I'm with you, but and I'm not terrified of it. I'm not predicting it. It's just, I'm a chronic worrier, right? With injuries, I always fear the worst. I'm like, okay, what could go wrong? And maybe I just need a couple more years of the Reed Mahomes magic to be like, screw it, 14 wins every year. I don't care who they play. Because that's pretty much how life became with the Patriots, right?
Right. It did. Now, and right now, you can't say that the division is particularly daunting. Maybe that changes. Now, it would be hard to imagine over the course of time that, the AFC West is going to be some version of the AFC East during the Patriots' reign, but that's possible. And the Chiefs have handled these teams anyway, even when they have been pretty good. So there's your start to your season being in a strong place. And if what seems patently obvious in front of our faces is that Chiefs are going to have the best quarterback or one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks, who knows, maybe somebody comes in and sets the world on fire, and they have an outstanding coach, that it just seems mighty unlikely that they're not going to win a whole bunch of games. Did Patriots even have like an 11-win season during this stretch? Maybe when, besides a season where Brady got hurt, didn't they win 11 when Matt Castle played?
They had one. Yeah, they did win 11 with Castle. They had a 10-win season the year that they lost to the Ravens, is my recollection here. Let me look. I'll tell you that here in a second. But, no, I mean, to your point, it was pretty much total domination from beginning to end. Their worst was they won 11 in 18 en route to winning the Super Bowl, right? Came to Kansas City and won the AFC Championship game. 12-11 going back last year. 12-11 and 18. 13-14, 12-12, 12-12, 13-14, 10-09. That's where they lost to the Ravens. 11 in 08. That's when Castle quarterbacked the team. 16-12, 10 in 2005. 14-14, 9, and 11 for their first one. So they were more than 11 since 2003. Every year except for 05, 08 when Brady's knee was hurt, 09, and 18, and they won the Super Bowl in 18. with 11 wins.
And I think that is, it's a little bit, it's a big reach, but it seems that's the expectation for the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs went out this year and went 11-5, which is a nice record. I think people would be just horrified. It's like, what's wrong? We lost 5 games, and I think your estimation has always been that 12 is kind of the benchmark for a truly fine season for a team, and I somewhat agree with that. But 11's pretty darn good, and I think it would be seen as a disaster.
By the way, you mentioned the Patriots. I'm looking here. Here are their ranks, starting in 01 in points scored. Their offense ranks, and we always think of Belichick and defense. Here are their ranks in points scored, starting in 01. 6, 10, 12, 4, 10. Now, we're done with the double digits. Okay? 7, 1, 8, 6, 1, 3, 1, 3, 4, 3, 3, 2, 4, 7.
Pretty salty.
I mean, but Belichick's a defensive guy, but I think he's also a guy that's deep into the analytics, and I think he figured out real quick you got to score.
That's 9 straight in the top 5.
For a stretch that ended this year, they were 7th.
They were only 7.
Yeah. But yeah.
And you're talking about a setting where, except when Randy Moss came aboard, you really don't think of them as having, incredible weaponry outside of Tom Brady. They had good players, but it seems like once again they were coached up.
Do you think of them having Hall of Fame defensive players?
A couple, but they didn't keep them. If they had somebody really good, they didn't keep them around, or guys got concussed out of the league. I don't know. They had some players like maybe Teddy Bruschi or some people like that, or Richard Seymour, who maybe, I would say Richard Seymour might be a Hall of Fame. A lot of people go in Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Richard Seymour would be the guy that I think is it, but that's my point to the whole Chris Jones scenario.
Ty Law, I guess.
Yeah, Ty Law made the Hall of Fame, but they let him go. They drafted him, and then when he got expensive, they walked. They kept him around for a second contract, and then that was it, no more.
But they got a lot of good football out of those guys, and then as you say, they let him walk. So you don't even think of them as super long-term Patriots. There's a lot. The Patriots are a very intriguing team to try and analyze because they did things at an incredibly high level, and in a lot of cases, you really somewhat do think that it's a lot about the coach. You do.
I think it's a lot about the coach, but I think the part of what's underrated about them is the team building, the GMing.
Right.
And I think they're really the only team you should be studying because they've done it in the modern era with the salary cap. There's no point in figuring out how Vince Lombardi put things together because it was entirely different. But this is in the salary cap era, the current playoff system. They went to the Super Bowl 9 times in 18 years. They won it 6. Like that's the only team you need to look at. And to me, that's why I'm so adamant about, like, listen, when it comes to the Chris Jones contract, I don't think the Patriots would be sitting here. Now, I think the Chiefs, I personally think the Chiefs probably wanted to trade Chris Jones. And I think the market fell out from under him because of the fear of what the cap's going to be next year. That's what I think. I don't know that. I mean, I feel comfortable that the Chiefs would explore all options, that Andy Reid and Brett Veach, we know Brett Veach doesn't mind making trades. He's fired trades all over the place. So we know he's a young, aggressive guy that's not afraid to do something. But I'm convinced. Now, do I think he's going to be here? Yeah, I think he's going to be in Kansas City. But I think he's got to decide, does he want to get his $16 million this year? I personally wouldn't sign him to the extension, right? I'd make him play for 16.
Right.
But don't you think the cap, finally somebody else has said it besides me, and it was Adam Schefter, and he was quoting what he's hearing from the league, that it could be 20, he's hearing estimates of 20, 30, 40 million less. Some people even saying 70 or 80 million less. Well, right there, that explained why there hadn't been any significant conversation by all accounts with anybody about trading Chris Jones, because nobody wants to give up picks and sign a contract that's going to force them to then cut 3 players next year because of how big it is.
Well, I think just as things in other areas have changed and it's been a changing landscape, just think at the outset of having people stay at home and everything like that. I think people's mindset about things down the road in August and September and October was far more optimistic. The league itself, the fans, probably the front offices too, when they were thinking about signing people. The more time goes on, the more they realize we really could be looking at, missing football games or playing in front of empty stadiums. And by the way, I was going to say before, if we don't play football in the National Football League right at the outset of the season, even in empty stadiums, then we have taken a serious step in the wrong direction as far as this is concerned, and we're going to have bigger fish to fry at that point.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And yes, that will be what we're talking about. But I think if there's a moral of the Chris Jones story, we'll see how it plays out. Maybe he ends up signing a deal that's, totally friendly and, works for the team and they keep adding players. But I think if they end up sideways with him and he plays for a year or he holds out into the season and they have this protracted thing go on, if it just ends badly, the moral of the story is the first time you go to try to sign a guy and you don't get it done, you take the best offer you can get right then. From here moving forward, I have no problem. I'm not saying Brett Veach played it wrong because he won a championship, right? He won a Super Bowl. And when it's been 50 years, whatever it takes. I mean, I truly believe any mistake that they made, I don't care. They did it in that drive to win a championship. I think you do everything you can to win the first championship. If it's been a long time or the franchise has never won it, you do everything you can. So having Chris Jones, I don't think that the Frank Clark deal comes about if Chris Jones signs last offseason. I think that was like, okay, well, I got to have a pass rusher up here. And so he went and got Frank Clark. He said, okay, so Chris Jones is going to play cheap. I don't have to carry his number, and so I can get Frank Clark in here, and let's go. We're balls to the wall, all in to win a championship over these next 2 years of Patrick Mahomes' rookie deal. Whatever it takes, we've got to get one in one of these 2 years, and they did it. So attaboy, well done. But now moving forward, you shift gears. You now don't carry that. You can't win the big one. Andy Reid's not carrying, the best coach to never win one. All that's gone. Right now, you do. Well, you don't have to keep popular players. Oh, we're trying to sell tickets. You're the hottest thing going in professional sports, and so now you get a little bit ruthless with the roster construction around everybody except 15. The rest of them can come and go. I hate to say it, but they can come and go every year. The only one that matters is 15. And
you referenced the Patriots. That's the way the Patriots did it. If people didn't notice, then they're fools. They had 12. The Chiefs have, in all likelihood, a better version. And right, you can win around that if you believe you know what you're doing, and that you have the confidence in yourself. And it would seem like Brett Veach does, that I don't have to hang on to this guy because I can find another version. Now, maybe it's a 90% version. It's 60% of the price. So you have to have that confidence that the menu has been set for you by somebody else. And if you have enough confidence in yourself, you should, be smart enough to look at the greatest run in NFL history, especially when you consider the era that we're in, as you referenced with the salary cap.
We'll take a break. More with Danny Clinkscale. It's Danny Unleashed. We'll unleash him on the NCAA's response to Kansas. Get that next. It's brought to you by Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. I know it does with Easton Roofing because they've been on my roof, did the repairs to my roof. Hail has been coming through. We've had 3 or 4 hailstorms around the metro. If you've got an older roof, if you're just not sure, hey, free inspection, free estimate from Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. That's how they go about doing business. Of course, yes, everything they can do without being face-to-face with you, keeping you and their employees safe. It's what they do. Residential and commercial roofing, certified commercial roofer. In fact, a manufacturer-backed warranty, labor, materials up to 25 years. Call today. Locally owned and operated. Great KC Company. 913-257-5426. Online, it's eastonroofing.com.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. What's the difference at this time of year as we head toward the warmer months for homeowners, and what should they be looking at, coronavirus or not?
If you didn't do a good job of home maintenance in the fall, cleaning your gutters out, when we get the spring rains, that can be a real problem. So you want to make sure that you've done a good job on your home maintenance, cleaning your gutters out. We can help with that. I always tell people they never get their roof inspected. They get their furnace inspected once a year, but they never get their roof inspected. And we do the inspection on your roof for free. So you call, you make an appointment, and we'll show up, do the inspection. It's free. You should have your roof looked at once a year. Take advantage of us. And most likely you're fine. And if there's a problem, hopefully we can get out in front of it and save you money in the end.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Talking to Danny Clinkscale. It's Danny Unleashed, brought to you by Easton Roofing. 913-257-5426. eastonroofing.com. Danny, what do you think? NCAA taking this a little bit personal? Is it look like a different kind of response than what you would normally expect? Or am I just a novice at reading these kinds of things, and this is how it always is?
I think that the NCAA, yes, I think they are taking it a little personally, because I think that they feel like Kansas is just completely saying we didn't do anything when we all know they did. And I don't think as an enforcement group you should get infuriated, but as you probably have, it's probably human nature to do so. I mean, to have your statement, I mean, there are a lot of things on each side that probably should have been used different language with, for sure, but I don't think anything can top that Kansas's thought that the Kansas NCAA enforcement staff reply does not in any way change the University of Kansas position that the allegations brought against our men's basketball program are simply baseless. Simply baseless. I mean, that's ludicrous. I mean, that's the dumbest thing in any of the 92 pages, the 400 before. Of course, they're not baseless. That's ridiculous. Does that make Kansas, should they go down for the count for saying that? No. But I get pissed if somebody said that to me. They're not baseless. They're not in any way baseless. That's a joke. But some of the things the NCAA says are overstated. I don't think there's any. And Kansas, Kansas to me is ultra fortunate in the timing of all of this going on. First of all, we're in a world where if you say something like, these allegations are simply baseless, you just feel like, okay, they're baseless, whatever. You just say it and hope it's true. And also, I think we're also in a landscape where day by day, month by month, year by year, the model of the NCAA is changing so rapidly that I think a lot of people are saying, well, what? This isn't much different than what's going to happen in the future, where somebody's going to be able to get money, to play basketball. So I think the fact that this is taking a long time, the atmosphere around college athletics is changing so drastically. The coronavirus creates a sort of weariness as far as stories like this when people really just want games. I think Kansas should absolutely have some punishment in this case. And I think the fact that they're digging in is not a good look. And it comes at the same time that they're digging in on the David Beatty thing. I think the whole thing looks kind of bad. So if you want to try to paint either side as a villain, I think it's pretty easy to do so.
I think that's fair. I mean, I guess I think the part that you didn't cover that Kansas fans would scream at their radio is, and again, 17 people steal something, I steal something, and I get caught. I shouldn't get off because 17 other people did, right? I still did something wrong. I get that. I get that point. But that's a great analogy that people like to make, and I think it has a lot of merit to it in what you're saying. But it's not stealing, right? The industry has no problem with the kids getting paid. America has no problem with paying people who are talented. And I think that's the part. It's like, okay, this is an outdated rule. Can we agree on that?
Well, it's becoming outdated, and I think the whole idea of it's just, we've gone far enough down the road, and people have accepted a certain amount of things that they absolutely seem to have wanted to have the model of college athletics changed. You've brought up many times the soccer model of
right.
the club and everything else, and that's fine. There still is college soccer. Guys get drafted in MLS from college soccer.
Not for much longer. I'll be honest with you. I think the draft is going to go away.
Are they the best players? No, but yes. What I'm saying is that what we would see if you want to change the model as drastically as it's being changed, and you have guys now just going to go train for a year and get paid to do it, not even play in the D League, then you're just going to see a completely different college sports landscape. And if people still love it, that's fine. But I think it's just there's so much change going on that I agree with you. To say that the rules are not outdated, but they broke the rules as they were at the time. This is sort of like Rashad Breeland or something like that.
That's exactly where I was going to go. That's exactly where I was going to go. Is that like nobody cares that he's smoking weed, and I don't think anybody cares that these kids are getting $100,000. We see the absolute hypocrisy of it, and I think
I absolutely agree with that. But what we also should not turn our eyes away from is the fact that this industry was knowingly breaking the rules or turning a blind eye to rules that were being broken. And, that's wrong. I mean, it is wrong, and not everybody was doing it. Was Duke doing it? Yes, likely. And I understand Kansas fans' angst, but pointing the other way and saying, well, they did it too, is always the lamest defense to me.
It is. It is. But if the same way, if the whole industry is going to change, and the guys are going to get the money, it seems like, okay, you're being, and it's difficult. It's more difficult than the marijuana thing, but it's a good,
right.
It's a good analogy. Let's just leave it there because Drake just said 30 seconds, and there's no way I could get through the parallel that I was going to draw in that amount of time. Danny, always great talking to you, buddy. Always love it. Stay safe. Looking forward to getting together in the studio before long. Have a great weekend, my friend.
All right, that sounds good, Saran. Be safe, everybody.
DannyKlinkscale.com. You can read Danny's work there. DannyKlinkscale.com. Brought to you by Easton Roofing, proud sponsor of this segment, and DannyKlinkscale.com.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.